Hey everybody, Dutch Sense here. 12:43 a.m. Central Time on Tuesday, January 28th, 2014. And we're looking at Earthquake 3D here, which is a USGS feed of the most recent earthquakes. And I've got it turned down for the last 24 hours, and we're looking at everything 2.5 and greater in the United States and 4.0 and greater internationally. Now, I want to draw your attention to several earthquakes that have occurred over the last week. And this is something that I've covered over the last several years, which is the topic of man-made earthquakes. Now, a lot of these earthquakes that have occurred throughout the Midwest, specifically over the last 7 days, let me go ahead and show you. Okay, we've got a swarm of earthquakes that occurred here at the border of New Mexico and Colorado, also 2.9 here in Texas, and a series of earthquakes throughout Oklahoma, one earthquake on the New Madrid in western Kentucky, right at the border of Illinois and Kentucky. Now I'm going to go look these up, and we're going to do each one here, and we'll look at each location and see what's at each location. I intend to prove to you by looking up on Google Earth that each one of these in the Midwest here are man-made. These are coming from fracking and oil well operations. So to do this, let's go ahead and open up Google Earth. And I hope you guys can do this yourselves. I've documented, again, for the last 2 years via screenshot, the different fracking earthquakes. Now, over the last month and a half, due to personal circumstances, I haven't been able to be around as much to do this. But we're going to get back into that, well, relatively soon here. So let's just go ahead and look up the largest of these 4 earthquakes here in Colorado, and that's the 3.7 magnitude. And this will pull from the USGS, and we get the coordinates just by copying the coordinates from USGS, put them in on Google Earth, and we'll see what resides at the location. Now, I've looked up past earthquakes in the same relative area, so it should be pretty interesting to see what else is here. Now, I always do this. If you guys are going to be doing this, I suggest that when you do look up the earthquake, that you place mark it and date it, so that you know what date it was, and when you come back and look in the future, you'll know what time it was, what date. Okay, and this is the first time I've looked this earthquake up, so I do not know what is right here. Let's just back it out. Okay, let me just take this back out a little bit. Here's past earthquakes and past frac well areas that I've looked up. This is the first earthquake I've looked up here, and you can see, it doesn't really take a rocket scientist to see the operation that's going on here. We've got a nice high-resolution image of the pumping apparatus in the center, and then they lay pipeline that'll go to these central areas where they have compressor stations that then funnel that off via other pipeline to actual areas where the gas is processed. Look how big the operation is. Okay, it just keeps on going and going and going. And then we get down to where there's been past earthquakes. Here's a 3.9 on September 8th, 2013. And here's our nearest well. So that was the swarm of earthquakes here in South Colorado at the border of New Mexico. Let's go look up Texas next. We've got a 2.9 magnitude earthquake. We're going to do it the same way. We're going to pull the coordinates, and we'll put them in here on Google Earth and hit search. All right, and we're going to place mark as well. Whoop. And what date was that? Jan 28th. Sorry, I'm doing this one-handed here, guys, on a number pad. All right, and it doesn't, you could see it even before I typed it in. Here's our apparatus, part of a huge operation. Too many to mark. Each one of these, just to prove it. Okay. So that pretty much settles it for Texas as well. And it's part of a massive operation. We have other earthquakes that have occurred in the area in 2013, multiples, and we've got another one here. And of course, this is all part of a large shale fracture operation of some sort. Okay, and let's look up one of the earthquakes here in Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma is something that I've covered ad nauseum, so if you guys aren't familiar with that, I'll put a link down below so you guys can look this stuff up and verify the past earthquakes that have occurred in the area. USGS has even confirmed that these are from fracking, man-made, induced seismic activity. And we'll get to why in a second here, why this is occurring. But first, let's go verify this other earthquake in Oklahoma. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing, 2.8, Jan 28th, 2014. There you go. Here's our different apparatus, and we've got our separate pumping station here, part of many. Got another one here, another one here. That's just the nearby ones. Let's back it out and see how many more there are. Okay, looks like we've got more down here to the south. And this is how you do it, guys. You have to go and look up each individual station here, and if you want to, you can take the time to place mark them yourselves, so when you come back in the future. Now, I'm not doing that in this video because that takes too long. You can see where I've done it in the past around each larger earthquake that occurred, coming in and documenting this. This is a huge problem. We're having massive earthquakes, a large series of earthquakes that have occurred, no less. We had 5.0 earthquakes in the same locations over the last 3 years. Southern Colorado, Oklahoma, and in North Texas. Now, this is part of the North American craton. The craton itself, and to see it, let me turn the earthquakes back down, reaches from up here in the Pacific Northwest, curls down here in a U shape, and then goes back up to the northeast, up here to the split in the continent. Right along here. And let's go back and look at the earthquakes. Okay? So this is occurring along the edge of the North American craton. Unfortunately, what they're doing is they're weakening the North American craton. At specific points, we're seeing large seismic movement, and that's due to the pressure from the west. And that leads in to the rest of this little earthquake update we're doing here, which is the West Pacific starting to pick up again. Each time we see this tremendous activity in the West Pacific, we start to see the edge of the craton be displaced. And that's due to the subduction process on the west coast not being able to keep up with the amount of activity that's going on here to the west. This is just 4.0 and greater over the last 7 days. We have a few 6.0s that have occurred now, and that was here in Sumatra and over here in Greece. And you can see the follow-up earthquakes there. I would say that with this amount of movement, we can expect to see further movement in the next several days in Europe. But just follow the line of earthquakes. Goes right along the plate boundary, right over to this hot spot that's been just out of control over the last several years. Now, you're probably wondering, if you've never seen this before, what the height indicates. The height indicates the depth of the earthquake. So we're looking at about 3 kilometers over here, right along the edge of the craton, right at the edge of the craton, no less, if you know about the depths. And over here in the West Pacific, we have cluster points where we see 4 and 5.0 earthquakes happening at a very deep level. And then we see follow-up large earthquake activity at a shallow level in adjacent areas. This happens over and over and over again. So with this amount of movement, and you can see certain cluster points of large earthquakes happening at a heightened depth, then that means we need to watch these areas for further large-scale movement in the near term. And that extends all the way over here to Europe at our different cluster points here. Okay, now recently we haven't seen very much activity up here to the North Pole or along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. That is an area that we need to watch. We're going to need to watch the northern Mid-Atlantic Ridge for possible movement in that 5.0 range, possibly even that like a 6.0 like we saw down here about a month ago. Okay? Much love, guys. Always have an earthquake plan ready and be prepared, whether it's for a man-made earthquake that could be in the 4 to 5.0 range, cause damage to your house, or a larger natural earthquake. We do need to be aware on the eastern edge of the North American craton, due to this movement, that we're going to see follow-up movement up here towards the northeast. Somewhere along the eastern edge, this plate transfer, the stress transfer, if you will, is going to occur to the east because it's spilling over from the west to the south towards the east. And this 2.6, well, let's just go ahead and look it up. Might as well while we've got Earthquake 3D open. Okay, and we'll just go ahead and paste this in. And this is relevant to people like me who live in St. Louis, Missouri, along the New Madrid seismic zone, also the Wabash Valley seismic zone, when we see this kind of movement here. And this is in a residential subdivision there, kind of in southern Missouri. What do we got here? Oh, wow. A uranium enrichment facility? What are the chances of that? Now, guys, this goes back to the earthquakes next to nuclear plants that we saw. Okay, we've got some frac wells up here to the north. Let's go ahead and look at these. Of course. Okay, so we've got frac wells, we've got a uranium enrichment facility, all within the same general area. It looks like we have a gas pumping or frac well here. Okay. All right. Well, that pretty much settles it too then. This would be a fracking-induced earthquake as well. I would have thought it would be a natural. I haven't looked up in the past what's right there, but there you go. Okay. So, anywhere along the North American craton that's being fracked is starting to see earthquake activity. And again, as I showed you, the West Pacific, completely out of control, really showing a large amount of earthquake movement. Really, multiple 4 or 5.0 earthquakes all the way around over the last 7 days, and then spilling down to the West Coast. And again, we can see the West Coast earthquakes here by just turning these up a little bit. The 4.0 that occurred here in Nevada is right in between 3 different large quarries. We looked that up earlier this week. You guys can feel free to do this on your own. Go look these up. And then we've got 2 earthquakes out to sea in the fresh new lava fields off the west coast, off the north coast of California and the western coast of Oregon. We have fresh new lava fields verified by the USGS. Overall, it's a lot of movement to see. We do need to be prepared, have a plan, be ready just in case. Never panic, always have that plan, guys. Much love.